Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is a good anime, and I'm sure you all already know that. I'm also sure you all already know how much I just love GX and have spent countless hours watching and rewatching it to the point I can find a weirdly specific quote in a weirdly specific episode. I have no life, my brain is just Yuki Junai. So because of my love for this series, I decided to buy and read the manga, simply because the more GX the better. Thing is, the manga was completely different, and I'm not opposed to that. It just had me thinking about which one I liked better, the manga or the anime, and why. I'm a media head, so of course I put more thought than necessary into it, and that's what I'd like to talk about today. As always, take note that I am talking about the GX sub exclusively whenever mentioning the anime, because there is indeed a big difference between the dub and the sub. Also remember, there's going to be a lot of personal opinion in this video, and if you disagree, then hey, I'm just a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan on the internet, don't take it to heart. Before I get into the actual content of both of these, I need to state that adaptation is hard. Adaptation is the act of taking one piece of medium-specific media and translating it to another piece of medium-specific media. Probably the most popular form of adaptation being book to film. But it's not easy, and I'll tell you why it's not easy. There's this little thing called fidelity. Fidelity is, to put simply, a series' faithfulness. That's why we have things called faithful adaptations, because they preserve the fidelity of the original series. And for script writers whose job is to adapt media, fidelity is the bane of their existence. Because I guarantee a completely faithful adaptation isn't something a fan actually wants. For example, anime and manga can translate well into one another, sure, but a completely faithful version of a manga adaptation would be near still images and jarring cuts. Because animation and film editing don't work for manga, and manga panels don't work for anime. Do you get what I mean? It's the same for books. A book cannot completely faithfully adapt into a movie without the movie seeming janky and unwatchable. This is because literature does not work in the same way as film, and film doesn't work in the same way as literature. When you read a book with the idea to adapt it, you need to think of what scenes to cut, what scenes to shoot, and what scenes would integrate well into one another on screen. Fast cuts to show action in a film would not work in a book, and that's why we see scenes changed around or meddled with, because the script writer and director have decided that this is what will work best for film. So the adapter's job is to decide how much of the fidelity they'll actually keep. But the problem is, an adaptation will always invite comparisons. That is, comparisons to the original work, and this is the book was better crowd. That crowd also exists in anime with the manga was better, and I cannot tell you how frustrating these people are. Yes, there is such a thing as bad adaptation, but fans comparing works is not the point. It's unfair to compare manga to anime because anime isn't manga. It's anime. To show one panel from a manga and complain about how the anime made it look shit isn't taking into consideration what anime is. Of course the manga will have more detail. Of course the manga will read better to some, because you're comparing a single still image to a TV anime where the animators had less time. Because you're comparing a medium where you control how long you can look at a page and read over it again and again to a medium where you have no control over how long scenes last. You cannot have a completely faithful adaptation, and you should not compare mediums. It's actually really interesting because fans tend to like the manga due to the fact the manga came first, which means they can read ahead in the story. Because of this, manga readers develop expectations on how the anime should play out, and God forbid you change one detail or take a different path in the story. Because the second you do, you get an uproar of that didn't happen in the manga. Whether one is better or not is personal opinion, and anime's manga can't be its gospel because it cannot translate over properly. If you want an anime to keep a manga's fidelity, that's your personal opinion, but that shouldn't be a solid fact of how to adapt manga to anime. It also comes down to when someone sees something first, they become more comfortable with that and then get upset when whatever comes along second is different because it's not what they expected. This isn't always the case, but it's certainly the case for the book or manga is better crowd a lot of the time. My advice would be to go into a film or anime with the idea that this isn't the same as the book you read or the manga you read, but exists as a separate entity entirely. equally. That way your judgment isn't because of the comparisons of a previous medium, but whether or not the medium you're currently experiencing is enjoyable in its own right. Okay, now let's get into the actual topic of this video, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The reason I talked about all that is because I want everyone to have a firm grasp on this idea of manga versus anime and what I think of it. And what I think is the GX manga and anime shouldn't be compared at all. Why? Because these aren't just two separate mediums, these are two separate stories altogether. I said this already in my Chaz video, but the characters in the manga are not the same characters you see in the anime. They are their own beings. Manga Chaz or manjome isn't trying to mirror or emulate anime manjome, and the same can be said for Judai, Asuka, Sho, and so on. There is no attempt for a faithful adaptation here. These manga characters simply have the same looks and names as the characters in the anime. And the interesting part is the GX manga came second, which means the manga is an adaptation of the anime. So it was a purposeful choice for the manga to follow its own story completely separate from the anime. So for this reason, that when I compare, it's not me saying I like what the anime did because the manga didn't do it. It's me saying I like this more due to my personal opinion of how it was written. So as long as we're all good on that, we can charge ahead. When I started thinking about whether I liked the anime or manga more for GX, there was a comment I remember getting that wouldn't leave my mind. The comment said something along the lines of, "I'm interested to see what the GX manga is all about, considering manga is usually darker compared to their anime counterpart. Usually this is true due to television and literature sharing different censorship laws, but for GX it's actually the opposite. For GX the anime is by far much darker and in my opinion much more mature. I actually don't know why, and I would like to know, but alas I do not live inside the head of Kazuki Takahashi, so I will die with this question plaguing me for the rest of my life. So with the assumption that a lot of people watching this haven't read the GX manga, I will give a brief rundown of what the manga is all about. The manga takes place during Judai's first year at Duel Academia and only his first year. We get no opening for his character like the anime does and instead jump right into it. This means we don't learn of entrance exams and we don't see Judai making friends, he just has them. This can feel jarring at first, but at the same time Judai's introduction is so upfront and with everything already being established, it wastes no time getting into the setting and the characters. In fact, it wastes no time with anything. There is absolutely no filler anywhere in the manga in my opinion, and I feel this isn't a good thing. The reason I say this is because I do believe there is too much filler in the anime, but fillers can still show us a character and how they function or how they connect and speak with other characters. It kind of feels like the manga has a lack of fun, I suppose. Because fillers, while being fillers, are fun and can be goofy things writers enjoy writing. Although overall it comes down to the GX manga being so compact, which means it doesn't have time to establish a lot of characters. Judai uses a different deck consisting of different heroes, with his ace being elemental hero Terra Firma, which took me a while to find because the manga kept calling him Earth, which I assume is the Japanese name. This monster is also on the cover of the first issue, and when I saw it I thought, Neo sure looks different, but apparently this is a different man. Not that it matters because holy fuck his beast! Judai's deck is different due to him having a mentor named Koyo Hibiki, who is apparently the top pro duelist at this point in time and someone Judai meets in a hospital when he was a kid. It's through Koyo that Judai discovers his love for dueling, and Koyo's dueling outfit being a bright red is also why he likes the color red so much, which I have to say is a much better reason than I just think it looks cool. Judai is given Koyo's deck due to Koyo being too sick to duel, his illness not something doctors can figure out, and Koyo is actually the one who could see Winged Kuribo first. Winged Kuribo was originally Koyo's partner, the two having a strong bond, and because of the deck being handed over, Judai can now see Winged Kuribo instead. I'm still not sure about this decision. Seeing spirits doesn't seem to be a born thing, but just something anyone in this world can have if the spirits want it. This is evident by how Winged Kuribo messes around with Manjome's card when a child Manjome meets Koyo, and after that Manjome can see the spirit of his ace card. It's probably because of Wing Karibo's connection to past events. I'll get into that, but it's not really explained. I just don't think I'm super into the concept of seeing spirits because a stranger gave you a card. Which, to clarify, is different from anime Manjome, since being given Ojama Yellow is not the reason he started seeing spirits. I don't know. Some like the trope of the protagonist being born a normal person and being handed greatness or power, but I suppose I just liked the concept of Judai being this mysterious being with a bunch of shit connected to his soul. Hence why he could see spirits. This is an opinion, obviously, so feel free to tell me what you think about the manga's decision. Anyway, Koyo also has a sister called Midori, who's so hot, and is the teacher for the Red Dorm in Duel Academia. She is absolutely the best thing about the manga, and is just such a cool character in general. She's meant to be like a big sister to Judai, although she feels more like a mother to me, and basically watches over Judai to observe his growth as a duelist. Her relationship with Judai is very wholesome and sweet, and it feels like Judai genuinely sees her as family and vice versa. My only complaint is we don't see enough of her, which you'll find is going to become a common complaint from me with a few characters in the manga. The first issue is about character establishment and character introductions. We find out Manjome is a top duelist in the school and actually holds a lot of respect for Judai, the two of them being traditional rivals and taking their rivalry very seriously. He is very serious and definitely intimidating, and his personality barely holds any similarities to his anime counterpart. Asuka's introduction as a duelist is her strife of being seen as just a woman when she wants to be seen as a duelist. Pretty decent for a Yu-Gi-Oh series if I'm honest. Her personality in general doesn't really stray much from anime Asuka's, but her character feels better handled. Sho is actually much more competent as a duelist. If you know me, you know I don't like Sho for reasons I can't get into right now, but I actually like Sho in the manga. His duel with Judai was cool and their friendship is quite sweet, which isn't something I can say for the anime. Misawa is interesting because I had loads of people telling me Misawa is so much better in the manga, but I honestly didn't see much of a difference. He feels the same to me. Only difference is he's a bit more involved and has a crush on Asuka. But he also mainly uses a yokai deck, which is just really cool, so he's got that going for him. And I don't even usually care about decks. Controversial Yu-Gi-Oh opinion, I know. The second issue is almost all about Judai as a kid and his relationship with Koyo, which is an emotional ride, honestly. Also, baby Judai is just so goddamn cute, I want to pinch his little cheeks. But we're also introduced to Kaiser. Kaiser has just come back from overseas studies and is so much more mellow in the manga. He clearly has a lot of love for his brother to the point he was going to fight for him, and is named as one of the two kings at Duel Academy, with the other king being Fubuki. We'll get into that. It's along with Kaiser that we're introduced to two characters who are manga exclusive, David Rabb and Reggie Mackenzie. If you can't tell by those amazing names alone, these two are American and hail from Duel Academy's American school. They also have creepy matching earrings, and Reggie certainly looks like a respectable duelist. After issue 2, the manga jumps right into the story and builds up the already quickly established looming threat over Duel Academia. Because of Kaiser's return, a tournament is held for the entire school, with the winner being given the chance to duel Kaiser. Stuff happens, people duel each other because this is Yu-Gi-Oh, and Manjome gets the first Shadow game. Because the GX manga somewhat follows off of the Duel Monsters manga story, and because Shadow games and Duel Monsters were actually violent, the duel feels pretty heavy. The duel ends up being against David, who has some kind of evil aura sitting in his earring. Those damn Americans! Throughout meeting David, we find he's looking for a spirit, this spirit being Winged Karibo, but encounters Manjome's spirit, a Light and Darkness Dragon. It's because of this he throws them into a shadow game, and what do you know? Manjome wins! I honestly wasn't expecting it, so it caught me by surprise. David gets sent into a coma and will stay that way for the rest of the manga. Great character, man. And the shadowy presence moves into Reggie's earring, whomst is willing to have it. We discover Judai and Manjome made it to the finals for who gets to duel Kaiser, and we're finally introduced to Fubuki. Manga Fubuki is deemed incredibly strong and is equals with Kaiser, hence being the second king of the school, with the two of them being good friends, and although Fubuki is still a hopeless romantic, he is a lot colder. They kind of sucked all the goofiness out of him and replaced it with a narcissistic, serious duelist, who still respects women. But honestly, in my opinion, manga Kaiser actually seems softer than manga Fubuki, which is interesting. The final duel between Manjome and Judai takes place, and Manjome wins. I was actually shocked, but also happy about this. The expressions for Judai alone were heartbreaking yet amazing, and Manjome's total air of power really came through for these pages. It was fantastic, honestly, and I'm glad it happened. But Manjome also has so many high-level monsters in his deck that watching this boy duel always stresses me out due to his high possibility of drawing a brick hand. But of course, our protagonist can't do nothing, so while Manjome is off dueling Kaiser, Judai discovers his teacher and big sister figure, Midori, is off dueling an evil Reggie. Midori unfortunately loses, but it's fine because she's still strong and sexy anyway. And Judai needs to duel Reggie in order to get Midori back. Judai wins, of course, and the shadowy presence seems to vanish, and everyone's happy, and things feel like they go back to normal. Oh, and Manjome lost against Kaiser, by the way, but 'twas expected. And now we're finally introduced to our three favorite exchange students. Although to be fair, Manga Amon isn't even anything, really. In fact, none of them are anything. All four of them just do nothing, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. They also all seem to be from the same academy, I think, which also makes all of them American. I don't know, it was very briefly explained, but you look at this man and you tell me that's an American.
It's a beautiful!
They exist as walking plot devices, and they may have somewhat existed as that in the anime, although that's very debatable, but at least they had character. So much character that they became very beloved, and these four especially are one of the reasons why the GX manga and anime cannot be compared as the same series to me. Manga Johan also doesn't have the crystal beasts, which is arguably the coolest and most interesting thing about anime Johan, and instead he has a bug deck.
Say goodbye to Exodia! My cards!
It's really weird. There's a moment where Johan and Judai connect and it feels like he'll be joining the friend group, but then nothing happens. Judai doesn't even duel him. Johan's character is literally just a laid-back guy who likes bugs. Seriously, his whole thing is just bug chasing. It is incredibly one-dimensional with nothing to dig at. Like, Johan's cute, but believe it or not, I need more than a pretty face and big tits. We also don't get to see the capacity of Johan's deck due to him only dueling twice from what I remember, and the same can be said for the other transfer students. Now, I don't really care much for the dueling in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but a good duel is still a good duel, and duels are still used as a way to bring across character personality, character desire, and a way to move the plot forward at times. So because we don't see any dueling, we don't have any character moments, which means these guys have no character. Oh, Ed's also introduced too, but it's kind of the same deal as these four transfer students. The only difference with him is he's after Fubuki's ass and he's friends with Reggie. Karen doesn't exist in the manga, by the way, so F in the chat. It feels to me that these four were introduced because the anime was still airing while the manga was being written, and I'm betting the explosion of popularity for these characters pressured the author into having to include them. It really feels they were all just slapped in without thought and just became walking bland containers for the main villain of the series. Anyway, all four of these characters are possessed by the same shadowy figure that took a hold of Reggie and David previously in the story, but they don't appear to know it and it only appears at certain times. Apart from Jim, apparently, who is just evil all the time. Don't ask me why, I actually don't know, but he is so bland and boring. O'Brien looks like he's going to pick up on it, but just vanishes along with the other three, only for Judai and Manjome to find them in a shed where they're all passed out on the ground. And that's it, that's all they do. These four transfer students exist to impose a threat just to all lose in their first duels against the Japanese Academy, duel one more time to gather energy or something, I don't know, then pass out on the floor. Again, they are literally nothing. When Amon passes out, Judai finds him in the forest, and this is where we meet a now possessed Fubuki. Judai ends up losing against him, and we get a somewhat terrifying scene of Judai in chains because of losing a shadow game. These pages are actually really cool. school. He ends up getting out of the punishment he was supposed to receive for eternity, and he and Manjome start piecing together whatever's happening. They find out the shadowy figure is named Tragodia. They find out the shadowy figure is named Tragodia, or Tragodia, however you pronounce it, and they find out the shadowy figure is named Tragodia, I think is how you pronounce it, and has existed as a source of evil darkness for millennia. The GX manga exists as a continuation of the Duel Monsters manga in a sense, so there's more of a connection to the Millennium items and ancient Egypt. I know the anime kind of did this too, but the anime used it more as a nostalgia bait thing than actually using it for story purposes. Turns out in the past, winged Karibo used to actually be white, and was used in ancient Egypt to absorb souls to then measure them against the feather of Mahat to see how evil or pure a person's soul was. Winged Karibo turned dark due to Tragodia being so incredibly evil, and Tragodia had to be locked away in a tablet so he couldn't destroy the world. Winged Karibo knew Tragodia would come back, hence why it chose a duelist to partner with so they could beat Tragodia together, but unfortunately Winged Karibo's previous partner, Koyo, couldn't win. This is why Koyo is in the hospital, due to him losing in a shadow game. Tragodia's goal is to take over the world and end it, or something. It's very typical cartoon villain stuff. There's not really much to look into here, but Judai needs to duel him nonetheless. The duel is awesome. Judai has a few panicky moments, but in the end he wins and the day is saved. The manga decides to end with a time skip, and we see everyone watching a Pro Leagues duel, with the duel being Judai versus Koyo. We never actually see the duel, kind of similar to the Judai and Yugi duel, but it's a decent way to wrap things up. I would also like to point out how funny it is that Johan's wearing this outfit. The reason anime Johan wore it is because he was possessed by Yubel, but I guess manga Johan is just a bug duelist who happens to be kinky? I don't know, it was a very odd choice. Overall, I have mixed feelings about the GX manga. Looking at the manga as it is, it's very obvious it feels very rushed with its story. It needed to be longer, and we needed to get a better insight and development of more characters. I also believe Judai really didn't develop much at all. When we're first introduced to Judai, he's kind of already mature, at least more mature than anime Judai was when first meeting him. He's already got his friends, his rival, and the only real development we get is when he changes his deck. We're shown Judai as a child, yes, but that's more backstory than actually watching a character develop, and yes, there is a difference. As I've said before, if you look at the anime and look at Judai in season 1, then look at him in season 4, you can tell he's been through a lot due to how different he's become. When it comes to the manga, Judai in the first issue feels the same as Judai in the last issue. I don't think it's a good thing, and it's kind of odd considering the amount of losses Judai went through and all these chances he had to develop more. However, I do need to admit to my anime GX bias. Because I saw the anime first, I have the idea in my head that this is how GX should be. This happens to everyone, and you can't shake the bias of the first medium you've consumed. You either hated the first one and loved the second, or you loved the first one and hated the second. Or you're like me and have such a love for the first medium you watch that you're unsure of how to think of the second one. In saying all this, I do think even if I had read the manga first, I still would have preferred the anime, but this is due to my Judai bias, and let me explain that. In the anime, Judai is the center of attention. He is the story. If Judai's not there, the story doesn't move, evident from when he disappears in season 2, and it's just filler after filler. As I've said, GX is an untraditional coming-of-age story, and coming-of-age stories have one key character they focus on. Because of this, most characters around Judai don't get much development. They kind of just exist. Asuka doesn't have anything to do, Kenzan doesn't have anything to do, Sho doesn't have anything to do, and by season 3, even Manjome doesn't have anything to do. It is completely Judai-centric. Now, I don't mind this because I like a good character study, but of course others would disagree with me, and this is what the manga does right. I believe the manga treats Judai's friend group better than the anime. Although they're still not the greatest characters, they actually feel somewhat on equal terms with Judai. We still see a lot of Judai, but we also see a lot of everyone else. Judai doesn't have to be around. Both Asuka and Sho are better characters. Misawa is still the same to me but gets more screen time, and Manjome is, for some, better. I still think anime Manjome is better due to what he goes through and how he matures, but that's all opinion based, so it's whatever. manga. I also think the duels are fantastic too, and I love the fact that Judai doesn't always win. I said before I don't care about the duels all that much, but even I'd get annoyed at how Judai would just win. Because of that, seeing Judai lose in the manga was always surprising, especially against Manjome, which was beautiful by the way. It's just a shame for me that the story feels so half-baked and the villain doesn't really feel threatening. I loved season 3 of the anime because one of the things I loved was Yubel and their motivations, which were incredibly unique and morally complicated for many. I can get into an argument with someone about whether what Yubel was doing was truly evil, but I'm sure we can all agree a dude just wanting to end the world is straight up evil. There's nothing interesting here for me. So, when it comes to GX, do I prefer the anime or the manga? Honestly, I prefer the anime far more. Does this mean you shouldn't read the manga? Hell no. The manga is still tons of fun and great to read, and I know people who hated the anime would probably love the manga. The art is also really beautiful and stunning at parts. Honestly, I'd stop on pages for ages just to admire the work. All the characters look fantastic and Judai especially is adorable. As I already said, I don't like comparing manga and anime because they shouldn't be compared, but this is talking about what I personally prefer. I won't say one is definitively better than the other because they're not the same thing and that's just my opinion, but I will say I myself just enjoyed the anime more. And that's that on that. This ended up being way longer than I expected, but I guess I needed to go all out to really explore the manga. Let me know what you think about the manga if you've read it, tell me what you like and dislike about it, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Bye! Hi again everyone, thanks for watching and hopefully enjoying this video. I would just like to do a quick Patreon shout out to my current $10 patrons. John, Luke Oleksiak, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Tess Monto and Rustage. I really appreciate all the support, and if you would like to support me on Patreon, the link will be in my description. Also, if you'd like to follow me on Twitch, that'd be cool as well, but of course you don't have to. And I'll see you in whatever I make next once again. See ya!